All right, there we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session. It has a title. You can read it there. I'm Scott. I'll be joined with Max and Anne. The way the session will work is I'll kick it off for the first 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm the product guy, so I'm going to talk product. And then Max and Anne are going to talk more on the partner side after that, which may be more interesting than product. But I wanted to give you the view of how we tell the story of modern security operations, and in particular the Sentinel capabilities. So let's dive. Oh, before we dive in, I think you've probably seen this 15 times, but again, congratulations to these 3 winners of the Partner of the Year. One of them comes from New Zealand. If you wondered what my accent was, I wasn't involved in the selection process, but so cool to everybody who participated. Thank you, and also our finalists. All right, there we go. We woke you up. Let's talk about it. So I'll spend very little time on the problem statement because every person in security is super familiar with this. Fundamentally, organizations have a lot of technical debt, and the technical debt is often the place that attackers go and attack. And so that's the biggest issue that most companies have. Many security teams grew up 10 years ago with a set of products that were a product to do something, another product to do something else, another product, endpoint, identity, data. They're all separate products. When you do that, you end up with little silos across all of those products. And ultimately, people need to use this to connect together the chain of attack. And it turns out that's too slow and also too taxing today. And as a result, attackers find the gaps between security tools where defenders are working with lists of things to do in the security tools, as opposed to thinking about the graph of where an attacker is, which is kind of a key thing as you figure out how to detect and respond here. And then it goes without saying with AI in particular, but before, attack timeframes are down to seconds. And so people are important in this space and will remain important in this space. And I have a slide even that talks to role evolution, which I'll be excited to share. But fundamentally, it's got to be the combination of people and AI because your attackers are using AI. And usually with customers, before I get into the security tools anymore, I take a bit of a step back and explain the Secure Future initiative, which I think has been ongoing since 2023, is creating foundational security across the whole breadth of Microsoft. There are many learnings actually from this Secure Future initiative that customers can take forward. Some not as extreme as the learnings we had inside Microsoft. For example, we retired 7 million Azure tenants inside Microsoft, which is insane, with very little business impact because people were putting up all these dev test tenants and forgetting to turn them off. And technical debt right there, get rid of it. Lots of work we did around code pipelines and standardizing that end-to-end security. Things we did around making sure that every app has the latest version of the identity libraries that are the most secure as opposed to a version. There's many more learnings here, lots of new detections that were created as a result. And actually some of the capabilities I'll talk about later, the data lake came from direct learnings that we had in, frankly, attacks that we suffered and also from SFI. So I'll bring through that. But it's really an interesting thing to look at, not so much for how is Microsoft doing better at security and all that stuff, but actually this is really useful to share with customers because a scaled down version of this is actually super interesting for you to implement on behalf of customers to get them in a right place. If I just pick a thing, if you don't have phishing resistant MFA on, you're in trouble. And you'd be horrified how many people still do not have phishing resistant MFA on for all the user accounts. That's the number one thing you can do to avoid spending more time as opposed to less time in the things I'm going to talk about in the rest of the section is turning on phishing resistant MFA. Anyway, so now let's step back to the core topic of today, which is what we like to call the AI first end-to-end security platform. All of those words matter. If we go to the end-to-end piece first, with Defender, of course, protecting from threats, Purview, with data security management and Intune, and with Entra for identities, Microsoft has the broadest set of capabilities in any security portfolio on the planet. And it's not just the individual capabilities themselves, but it's the scenarios that light up when you bring the two of them together. You know, you take data security into an incident with Defender. Obviously, identity plays a key role in the example of that. And so this enables us to unlock a much broader set of scenarios. Sitting on the foundation of all of those things is Microsoft Sentinel, which is both a SIEM and evolved into a security platform over the last 12 months. This has been a journey we've been on. I'm going to take you through that in a lot more detail. And of course, all of this is powered by the most diverse set of threat signals in the planet. There's just no other vendor that has the leading public clouds that we have across such a diversity of things, from Xbox to Dynamics to Office to Azure to Windows, you name it. They're all being attacked all the time. And all of that threat intelligence is then collected from all those diverse sources and used in the runtime of our systems to protect our customers. And of course, that is coupled with an extremely broad distribution of endpoint protection software on Windows as well as multi-platform. So underneath all of this is, I think, threat intelligence that's second to none in the industry, and certainly no one else gets 100 trillion signals. I'm also delighted the number's 100 now, so I can remember it. Anyway, and then there's work and security services that we do. Obviously, we largely rely on partners in this space, but we did introduce Defender experts here at this conference as a solution that has incident response and XDR associated with it. So with that as the products, you know, what is our aspiration? What's our vision? And certainly from a security team perspective, our aspiration is centered around pivoting the SOC teams, whether they be yourselves as partners or customers, either works, to be less focused on known threats and more focused on emerging threats. This is probably obvious, but just to say it out loud, AI works on patterns, and AI works best for known things. AI actually isn't the best thing to focus on for emerging things, brand new things. The first supply chain attack with 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗻 or SolarWinds. You know, a person could probably have found that faster than AI, new pattern. And so that's an example. But in the end of the day, a partnership between AI and people is important, where we want to focus the people on the proactive move forward pieces. And we're a good ways away from getting all the way to what I just described, but we're also really making some forward progress steps here. And if I just look at it, predicting attack paths, what have we done to AI enable that? At this very conference, we talked about predictive shielding, which is this notion that if my device has been compromised, and I have a graph of the organization so I can see other devices that it may be connected to, then Defender for Endpoint will actually block my access to the domain controller even before I've tried to attack that. And so predicting attack paths. And of course, you can do that in the midst of an attack, as I described, but you can also do that up front with exposure management, looking at your exposure graphically and saying, Scott has access to keys in Key Vault. What is Scott doing with access to keys in Key Vault? Get rid of that. And getting your posture secure by thinking like an attacker, thinking like each step in the graph, looking at that attack graph, and making modifications as well. For containing breaches, attack disruption is a core technology that Microsoft has that is, I think, very differentiated. Attack disruption is on by default for every Defender customer. It's like having a set of SOAR playbooks, if customers are more familiar with that, except they're much more advanced, and Microsoft keeps them up to date all the time with the latest threat intelligence. And so what happens is attack disruption in 3 minutes or less will go ahead and disrupt an attack without anybody being involved on the SOC side. And actually, this is important as you manage with your customers, because my user might be turned off or my device might be turned off, and your help desk system better be aware of how to recover from that situation. But by using attack disruption, we can fundamentally block attacks before they scale. And so we have many statistics of a small percentage of the estate being owned in ransomware scenarios, 3-4%, because we sample, or we make sure we're extremely high accuracy. We're all about being accurate as opposed to being fast on this one at the moment. but then 96% of that estate being fine because my device was compromised, my user account was shut down, but all of these folks can continue to work every day. And this is not endpoint detection and response technology. That technology is good, but we have examples of other vendors, I won't mention them, who were running on the servers and us that was running on the clients for various environments. And those server environments were owned and the clients weren't. Because attack disruption takes in signals from identities, it takes in signals from devices, apps, it takes in a broader set of signals and is a layer on top of EDR. Of course, empowering analysts to hunt with a rich experience is super important. I showed off in the innovation keynote with 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗳𝗏 the threat hunting agent, really an interactive agent experience using natural language to help really accelerate that experience, which is fun. And then it's a closed loop. So you will see us already today working on the predictive SOC and continuing moving further forward to invest in those technologies, because in the scheme of things, as someone was here at the beginning of cloud security or the beginning of virtualization or a number of these waves, we're just getting started in the things that we can actually do, even though they're incredibly effective today. And with all of that, there's always a bunch of angst to some degree from folks in the SOC on like, what am I going to do when this AI stuff grows up? Well, the good news is that there's 4 million open jobs, and as you know, because you're partners in this space, customers need your help. And that is not going to go away. And so this is a great space where supplementing people is a necessary requirement, because supply curve is tilted the wrong way. We also see the role of people adjusting in multiple ways. If I go back a few years, it was about alert triage, and we've done a lot to move alerts to incidents, but still, people spend a lot of time in the triage queues. If agents can do the drudgery there, such as the phishing agent I demoed with Judson, then fundamentally, you can move from being an alert triager to thinking about more scalable outcomes. You can move from being just focused on escalation to really optimizing the AI and enabling it to move further forward. From some capabilities which still will be helpful, just for the record, there's nothing wrong with niche specialists, but moving it out in a strategic perspective. So over time, this is not going to happen overnight. Roles will evolve. The drudgery, the tier 1 work will be all automated through the AI and agentic capabilities. And people will actually be able to get more strategic, more proactive, more forward-looking, which is really, really exciting. But make no mistake, this isn't about replacing people. This is partnership with AI and people together. So to enable all of that, fundamentally, you need two things. You need agents and you need a platform. And this is where we have been on a journey for the full year, actually, in taking Sentinel SIEM. It is and will always be a SIEM, but it's also now expanding its abilities to also be a full-blown agentic security platform. And what do I mean by that? Fundamentally, we learned, if you go back up above through some of these nation-state attacks and other things, that ourselves and not every customer stores all the security data they need in their SIEM. Many people don't put their posture data in the SIEM, just as an example. It'd be in some other system. But actually, it'd be really helpful if that posture data was in there. There's many data sources that are in the SIEM, but not all the data sources. And so we took a step back and we said, why is that? And it was really two reasons. One was the cost of storage. Let's do some really low-cost storage, use the standard models that you see in the data space, where the storage is separated from the compute, and 6 cents in US dollars for ingestion into our data lake. So low-cost storage is a piece of it. The second piece of it is then thinking about it now as a data lake for everything. It's a data lake for Defender, it's a data lake for Purview, it's a data lake for Entra, it's a data lake for Intune. We're on the journey of that right now. And it's not just a data lake for Microsoft. So if you're a partner that's a software vendor and you want to build another piece of software, if you have another piece of software like 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, just to pick an example, who's already done this on the right-hand side, you can take your piece of software and get access to this data lake and all that rich information that exists in the customer environment, and take your solution and then augment it with this incredible customer data to make it much more valuable. And fundamentally, we create this world of collective defense where there's just massive gravity of data that enables things. And this data lake is really important for a couple of reasons, beyond what I've said. The first of which is the next step up, and once again, this was another of our learnings, was the need to create a graph of your overall enterprise. And so if attackers know how to get through your systems more than you do, you've got a problem. And many customers today do not have a literal graph that explains this device and this user is connected and so on, so that they can't see literally the paths through their systems that attackers may use. And so we created an extremely high-scale graph. Turns out it's not an easy computer science problem, to enable you to put in all your exposure information, obviously incident information, etc. So there's a graph object that exists in this platform that is important, as well as tables and embeddings is actually vector to enable AI. And then the third layer in this new platform is enabling conversations with agentic. And that's where I'm sure you've all heard of the model context protocol servers. These enable agents to easily discover tools, which is a weird word, but that's the word we use. Tools are effectively methods so that you can manipulate the data in the platform. And so we've moved from just having a SIM with Sentinel, which it still is and always will be, to now having a genuinely open platform that has inputs with more than 350 data connectors. It's a very common question that customers have. I don't actually have the slide in here, but just about every connection you want, Sentinel already has now with the more than 40,000 customers that we have using it. And those connectors are also very scalable. We spent a lot of time in the last year improving the scalability of some of those connectors based on customer feedback. And then fundamentally, of course, all of this works with Security Copilot, which I'll get into in a minute. So that's the platform layer. Sitting on top of the platforms is solutions. And I guess Microsoft is, let me frame this differently. Every vendor in the market today is saying, I have a platform. Everyone. It's clear the right choice is a platform. It's also clear that not every customer is at that place right now. Many of them have lots of siloed solutions. But the question to evaluate then is, what platform do I choose? And I would like to say that before the word security platform was in vogue, Microsoft was already working on a security platform. We've been working on this longer than anybody else, and our approach has been to do this not so much from a merger and acquire technology and have it loosely coupled, but from let's engineer a beautiful architecture that enables fantastic sharing of information. And what that really means is completeness of scenarios end-to-end and comprehensiveness of scenarios end-to-end. Things like email security that you'll find here that some other vendors may not have, just to pick on a thing, or maturity of the platform. I may have a slide on this later, but I don't think there's any other vendor that has Gartner leadership in endpoint, Gartner leadership in SIM, Forrester leadership in XDR. I could keep going. So really both best of breed in the individual capabilities like Sentinel is, like Defender for Endpoint is, but also an integrated approach. And that's what you want. You want the best endpoint protection you can get, but you also want it to work great with identity and low latency and put it all together. And we've been on a huge journey to consolidate things over the course of 7 years. I think at some point 7 years ago, we had 6 portals or 6 user experiences. And then in this last year, we've collapsed all of them but 2. One is done. We're just waiting for customers to transition, which is Microsoft Sentinel itself is moving from the Azure portal to the Defender portal. It's generally available in the Defender portal, but not every customer is migrated there. We're working on that by sometime later in the year, next year. And then the second piece is cloud security. We're at this conference, actually, we demonstrated the next step of cloud security integration into the Defender portal, not just the alerts, but also the posture and configuration, and then there's kind of one more step there. So a unified pane of glass is critical, and we're really there, which is really exciting across the broadest set of scenarios in the industry. And then, obviously, on the Copilot side, I can spend some more time on that a little bit later, actually. So what this all enables then is, as I said, is this fundamental single pane of glass where whether you're doing exposure or whether you're doing threat, looking across endpoint, looking across email, looking across identities, doing SIM, doing XDR, IoT, I can list them all. All of those capabilities exist in there. And there is a set of agents that enable that, one of which was the TI briefing agent that we talked about earlier this week that gives you hyper-relevant threat intelligence. And so all this provides a great deal of simplicity. We're also working heavily to support our partners in this space. We know that multi-tenant architectures are critical to our partners in GDAP and those types of things. And we're continuing to evolve this capability to improve on what are already good multi-tenancy capabilities in the next 6 months to help our partners manage customers at scale. That's a key investment for us looking further forward. But if I step back on all of this, what does it really mean? There's very few times you get better something and save cost. But genuinely, when you move to a security platform, you get better security and you save cost. Why do you get better security? Because if you have all those signals together in that data lake, then your AI can run across all of those signals. If you're just doing AI on endpoint information, it's kind of interesting. If you're just doing AI on identity information, it's kind of interesting. But every attack involves a device and an identity. And so if you can do it across the broad data set of everything, you can actually now be in the mode of thinking like an attacker and getting ahead of an attacker because you have all of that aggregated data. And what that fundamentally does is lower the risk of breach, reduce the mean time to respond with things like attack disruption, and provide better security. So there's a Forrester study here that demonstrates that result. And it's certainly something I've heard from customers routinely as they move to the single pane of glass model and the comprehensive nature plus the agentic pieces. So unification, absolutely better response. In terms of the work that we do for licensing, I'm doing a licensing slide, but cool. You can buy our stuff a number of different ways. There are standalones, of course. If you are not aware of this, the Defender Suite is the new name for E5. So ME5 still exists, Microsoft 365 E5. But we renamed E5 Security to the Defender Suite recently, which rolls off my tongue a whole lot easier than E5, so I'm excited about aligning that. Of course, for smaller customers with less than 300 seats, Business Premium includes some of these security capabilities. And then Microsoft Sentinel, of course, is a consumption-based business with meters around data ingestion and data lake, to choose just a couple of them. Okay, so as I go a little bit further forward in the product section, and then we'll get to the partner stuff, I promise, let's talk some more about Security Copilot. So if I step back actually across every role that exists inside security and IT, one of the things that we're doing here is to look at what are the jobs to be done that people do. And typically there's a life cycle. In the SOC, it's about anticipating and preventing and then detecting and responding and triaging and automating and recovering and the whole lot. And looking across that full life cycle and saying, where can an agent help? Where can we reduce drudgery? Where can we get more autonomous in speeding up response? And I can assure you that wherever an agent can help across that life cycle, we are working on building agents, and we would encourage you to be building agents because we are absolutely an open platform, and customers and partners can and should be building agents. In fact, you can even monetize your agents directly in the security store, which is an interesting opportunity for you. So this isn't a view of agents that I'm planning on building, so don't take this as literally I'm going to have agents name these things, although some of them might be. This is more conceptually the set of work that we're working on over time. And one of my favorite announcements, along with Agent 365 actually, out of this particular Ignite was the Copilot news. Previously, Copilot was a separate purchase and still is in the consumption world. But if customers have Microsoft 365 E5, and hint, lots of customers have Microsoft 365 E5, then Copilot will be included for those customers. The rollout is going to take some time as we go through the first half of next year, just because of the scale of the work that we have to do there. But this is really, really exciting. So any customer that has Microsoft 365 E5, for example, if you're doing Defender for Office 365 with them protecting email, please turn on the phishing agent. It'll just be included as part of their overall subscription. You need to get that in, just to pick a thing. The TI briefing agent, another great one. I could keep going. There's conditional access things. There's policy things you can do at Intune and so forth. So really exciting for customers that AI is included. We've democratized it for E5 customers. It's still available as a standalone purchase for those that are not currently on E5. Okay, and just to rattle off a few more slides just so you have them in your bag of tricks. I already talked to the data lake, but this is the data lake. We announced it in, when did we announce it? Probably August. And it has been generally available since 9/30. We're seeing partners really move away from architectures where they had a SIM in some separate database for high volume logs, whether it be auxiliary logs or some other bucket, because the data lake gives you the ability to manage all this information directly inside the Defender experience through Sentinel. And by the way, all data that is streamed into the log analytics tier is actually automatically mirrored in the data lake, so it's already there. So this is really exciting. There's also a set of scenarios you can do on top of the data lake, by the way, including using your own big data analytics tools directly on the data lake layer without even using the Defender user experience, which enables a lot of flexibility for MSSPs that want to do things in their own experiences. The second piece of this, of course, is the MCP server and tools that are also now generally available at this conference. You can see this is actually using VS Code, and you can go on in and connect to the Sentinel MCP server off on the left, and then fundamentally get access to that information to manipulate and build whatever cool things you want to build on top of that as you move further forward. And as I mentioned, the security store is now generally available. This provides a surface for monetization as well as sharing if you just want to share your new agents and solutions actually that appears over time directly in the user experiences as well as in a standalone website. So there's a standalone website, but also a subset of these capabilities are now in the Defender experience directly in terms of the partner solutions, and we will extend that across Purview and Intune and other surface areas over time. Cool. So with that, I think this is my last slide, which is a weird slide to land on, but as I said before, fundamentally, there's not too many times you can get better security and save money, and certainly that has been the case. Here's some data that you may find useful for your customers. I certainly use this fairly regularly for obvious reasons. And with that, thanks for listening to the product side of the pitch, and I'm delighted to invite Max on stage to talk to you about customer stories. Thanks, Max.
So really quick, we wanted to talk about a couple of scenarios that really make what Scott talked about real and how we're seeing this in customers today. So earlier, if you attended the great session with Steve dspensa, he brought up two stats that I thought were just really interesting that I just want to reiterate. So one, 40 to 60 tools are being used by some organizations, and there's a massive shortage of IT security professionals. This is not news to any of us. This is just really kind of context for setting some scenarios. So really quick, I want to talk about two customer stories. So the first one is around Nationwide. So Nationwide is this banking and building industry in the UK, and they were facing these similar challenges that we were talking about. They needed a way to see the entire organization down with consolidate their platform into one spot. So they really looked at Microsoft Sentinel and the data lake capabilities to unify and create that platform so they have that holistic view. No CISO ever really wants to be in that scenario when they're talking about the ROI of ingesting the logs and is this one worth it, is this one not? Sentinel Data Lake has eliminated or at least reduced down that conversation to make it a much easier conversation. So now by consolidating everything onto Sentinel, they've really simplified their story. They've really been able to empower their workers to respond to the different threats that are going on and see that holistic view that is going on. Just as Scott talked about as well, they've been able to kind of upskill and increase the activities that the value of their security workers are doing. So they're no longer being reactive. They've kind of turned to threat hunting, and they're doing higher value activities that are more valuable to the organization. David Boda, the Chief Security Officer at Nationwide, Sentinel is a platform that's given them that foundation, that's enabling them to respond and really prepare themselves for the threat of AI that's coming. We're seeing more and more attackers starting to leverage that. And by having a unified platform with all the logs coming in, they're able to really see that from end to end. Another story I wanted to talk about is on the other side of things. So with the limited amount of security workforce that we have and how every organization is strained, I'm sure this is not a new story to any of you where you have the IT security professionals that are resetting passwords, and they're also the architect, and they're also the one talking to the executives and maybe even making the purchasing decisions just because they're wearing so many hats. 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗧𝗧𝗧 is a vehicle OEM that was struggling with this as well, and they were able to really, as they've been going through their electrification process, the demand on their security professionals has continued to grow and continued to strain them on the work. So by consolidating onto all of the different Microsoft products, Entra, Defender Suite, Defender for Cloud, Defender for Identity, XDR, they've been really able to streamline their security operations efficiency and once again, unlock them to do more higher value activities. So these are some stories that we really want you to kind of take to heart to help go and position to different customers, to help build your products on top of and help drive forward. So next up, I want to bring up Annie to really talk us through some incentives and resources that are available to help drive these.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Max. In our last 10 minutes, I get the privilege of speaking to you guys about many people's favorite topic, which is incentives and resources to help you grow your security practice with Microsoft. So I have about 5 slides. 2 of them are win formulas. And at Microsoft, our win formulas are basically the infrastructure that we provide to you to wrap around solution plays to help you move your deals from step to step through the sales cycle. And this first win formula is optimized for those of you who are targeting ME3 customers and looking to upsell them from ME3 to ME5, or you're looking to attach the E5 security suite, which Scott announced is now called Defender Suite, or the E5 compliance suite, which is now called Purview Suite. And so looking at this win formula in the beginning, the left-hand side of this slide, the beginning stages, we have tools that help you identify your target customers who are ready for this upsell, as well as content to execute campaigns. And an ideal call to action for these campaigns would be what we call immersion briefings. So if you look at the second column over, immersion briefings are one-to-many activities. They can either be virtual webinars or in-person events. And Microsoft has a security version of this and a data security version of this, and we can reimburse you for executing those immersion briefings. And then coming out of the one-to-many, those hand raisers, we have one-to-one activities for you where we again provide you the content. These are called envisioning workshops. And these are essentially live production demos of Microsoft's workloads in your customer's environment. And we have 3 flavors of these. There is a threat protection, which is the XDR security. We have a Sentinel version of that. And we have a data security version of that. And then coming out of the one-to-one to help you close the deal, we have a variety of CSP structural incentives, as well as promotional discount pricing. And then when the deal's closed, we even have incentives to help you post-sale. So we have deployment accelerators that will reimburse you flat rates for deploying the workloads in E5 or these security add-ons. And then even beyond that, we have incentives to help you grow your Sentinel consumed revenue. So as you hit certain thresholds, you can earn payback. And this whole win formula is optimized for partners with security specialization. That should be your North Star if your target audience are ME3 customers. Now this next win formula, if you blinked, you might think that this is the same win formula, but this is actually the win formula if your target audience are BP customers. So in September, just 2 months ago, we launched new SMB security and compliance SKUs that attach to Business Premium. And in the beginning of the sales cycle, we have, again, those resources that help you really identify the target customers as well as campaign material, drive those to the immersion briefings, and then when you get to the one-to-one step, if your customers are the largest BP customers, 300 seats or above, you can do those envisioning workshops that we just looked at. But for the majority of BP customers, what we recommend is a solution assessment. This is a one-to-one activity. Microsoft actually performs the assessment for you and then hands you back the report for you to go to review with your customers. This does not reimburse you, so it's not circled in green there. However, you don't have to use your own resources for the solution assessment. And then coming out of that are also those CSP structural incentives and promotional discounts. So when on that data security row at the bottom, I want to reinforce an announcement that we just made here at Ignite that starting December 1st, in just a few weeks, there will be a 50% discount, that's 50 half off, of our Purview for Business Premium suite for your accounts that have Copilot. And then moving on to post-sale, even in this BP space, we have an incentive to help you with deployment. So there is a brand new deployment accelerator for these new SMB security and compliance suites. It reimburses you a flat rate for deploying those workloads to your BP customers. And this only requires a designation, and it goes down to customers with 100 seats. That started on November 1st. And then I have a third win formula here because I know that a lot of you are building your Microsoft security practices maybe from ground zero, and so you may not have a designation. So this win formula does not require a designation. Most of these levers do not have a minimum seat count. So this helps you build your security customer base so you can go back then and establish your designation. And then speaking of that, this slide, you might want to take a picture of this, study this when you get home. This is our robust skilling, all related to security. In the first column, the credentials, that is skilling classes and information on how to get to designation or how to up-level to specialization. But in addition to that, the other columns on this slide also have skilling for sales, skilling for deployment, so you can utilize those deployment accelerators. And my second to last slide is take action. So the win formulas are by no means all the levers available to you. Those are just the highest yield for those particular scenarios, but we have a lot more levers available to you. In this slide is resources all around security and learning a lot more about the other resources. And I'm going to leave us on this slide. If you've been in any other partner sessions, breakouts, you've probably seen this, so I won't drain it, but there's a QR code. There are packages, and if you purchase a package while you're at Ignite, you can receive a in-person 30-minute consultation session while you're here on site. And at that, I think we have a few minutes for a Q&A. If 5 minutes? Okay, if anybody has any questions, there is a live mic in the middle.
I'm just going to ask, maybe you can hear me. How does all of this translate to GCCI government cloud work for federal workloads?
So his question was, how does this translate to GCC high and government workloads? So different programs have different like availability for GCC high. So for that, if we can talk offline, and I can help you with that.
Yeah, there's also some product feature differences in GCC high based on requirements. Yep, happy to go offline. Don't be shy. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you because of the blinding light. Go ahead.
I have two questions. Technical, one is commercial. Technical is about Microsoft Sentinel, right? Many of us probably did an incredible effort to do the multi-tenant and all that work, right? To make customers on board. What will happen now that it's easier to be independent? Like how that will change? You are thinking of Lighthouse in terms of M365.
Yeah, so the model does change somewhat when you move to the Defender portal, and we want to provide a consistent experience between everything in Defender, including Sentinel. Today, there are ways of doing that. They will get better without giving you all the details, but they will get better specifically. I'll just give you the details. We'll get better at GDAP over the next quarter or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. So. We recognize the need to do better in multi-tenancy pieces as related to GDAP specifically. We've also got some specific feature requests from partners for additional features beyond that, which I can talk to you offline. But the short version is there is some change required as we move across the portals because we didn't want to maintain two different models in one portal. That would be weird. And there is a little bit of work in progress in that nature. That you will see come to fruition with everything, I hope, by the end of May. And now I'm really telling you things I shouldn't. But we'll be in preview likely before that. Yeah.
The commercial question is, now that you change the name, Defender Suite and Fury Suite, right? That aligns with Intune Suite and Entra Suite. We have some customers that are asking, like, what's the long plan, right? In a few years, like you are, let's say, separating the whole security suite similar to Dynamics. You will still carry on with the productivity side? Like, what is the long term? Because right now, even if they buy E5, they need an extra licenses for Intune Suite and Entra Suite. So that's a pain on a conversation, being honest with you.
Sure. I mean, I can't tell you the future of business models, let alone the future of technology beyond a year or so. But our general goal is to enable customers to consolidate value in packages that are consumable to them. In some cases, that's standalone for customers, and in many cases, as you said, it's bundling things together. Certainly, you just saw us move in that direction with Security Copilot in E5, and so we'll continue to respond to market needs and work that through. All I can tell you is we look at that stuff on a fairly regular basis and get feedback, obviously, from both sales and also from customer feedback as we move further forward. Yeah.
Time for one more question.
Oh.
Will Security Copilot be in the Defender suite as well, and not only E5 in the future?
I don't know. It's a good question. I hope it will be in Sentinel at some point soon, if you're a Sentinel-only customer. And actually, just so you guys are clear, if you buy M365 E5, you can use Copilot with anything. So you can absolutely use Copilot with Defender, or you could use it with Sentinel if you buy, or you could use it with Intune, or you could use it. It's not tied to any of those technologies. And a large number of Sentinel customers have ME5 as well. Some don't, though. So that's probably the first thing I'd like to fix, and then we'll see on the next step down. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming out. If you have any other questions, we'll be over here for a little bit, but hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.